How shall I stand before thee but in silence? I will keep silent before thee. Be still and know that I am God, not the God of far-off altars, not the God of crowded words, but the living one, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. We enter now not by many steps, but by consent to hush, to that interior quiet where thought loosens its fists and the heart unclenches. Out of the silence, the presence and the power of God comes. Do you hear that? Not out of argument, not out of pleading, not out of mental calisthenics, but out of silence, silence that is not absence, but living fullness, a womb of spirit in which the Word is begotten. The peace you want cannot be earned, only received, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord, not by your moral muscle, not by your anxious arranging, but by the Spirit that moves when you are still. Therefore we turn the inner ear away from the clang and glitter of the street, away from the news of the day and the news of the nerves. And we listen for the still small voice, just beyond the physical ear, just inside the hearing of the soul. Keep this ear open, not listening for thunder, not waiting for syllables, but yielding to a quiet that is self-announcing, self-evidencing, a presence that knows itself and makes itself known. I knew a man who found this on a platform of a crowded station. Trains screamed, vendors called, children tugged at skirts, and the clock scolded him. He closed his eyes for a single minute, not escaping life, but entering life. He did not pray out. He did not reach up. He simply whispered within, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth." When he opened his eyes, the decibels had not altered, but the government had changed. The kingdom within had taken the throne, and the world without obeyed. The kingdom of God is within you, said the Master, and it is within, beloved, that we begin. The promise is sure. The deeper the silence, the greater the force felt. Health without struggle, harmony without management, guidance without guessing. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High abides under the shadow of the Almighty. And in that shadow, which is no darkness but a cool and living shade, fear evaporates and need loses its name. We are not collecting prizes for effort. We are receiving presence by surrender. So inhale the hush. Let thought take its shoes from off its feet, for the ground on which you stand is holy. Say it with me in the sanctuary of your soul. I will keep silent before thee, and in that keeping, discover that the silence keeps you. Beloved, if silence is the doorway, why then do we keep pacing the hall? Why have so many sermons poured over the land and left the land unchanged? Because talking about God will not produce the fruits of God. You can recite the menu and still be hungry. You can say peace 1,000 times and remain unquiet. Except the Lord build a house, they labor in vain that build it. Churches fill, choirs lift their voices, and the headlines on Monday read like Saturdays. And I tell you, the difference is that the hush was not entered, the contact was not made, the inner ear was not turned Godward. Sermons without silence leave life as it was found, because the Father within was not allowed to do the works. So you ask honestly, and I welcome the honesty, why hasn't it been true in my experience? Why have I not known this peace? Not because peace is far, but because we have sought it far. We have looked to creeds and crowds, to a tomorrow and a somewhere, while the Master whispers, the kingdom of God is within you. We have tried to construct peace by effort as if it were bricks to be laid and budgets to be balanced. We have piled affirmations like lumber. We have strained with mental might. But hear the word, not by piling, not by power, not by the cleverness of thought, but by my Spirit, which works in secret. The Father within, he doeth the works. Peace evades the striver, because peace is not achieved. It is realized in the quiet where God already is. And I know the ache of this hour. You are weary of hustle. Even while hustling, you hear a new gospel of anti-hustle and still make rest another task on the list. We turn Sabbath into strategy, retreat into performance. We make peace a project, and projects always demand a foreman. Then the little self takes the whistle and blows it all day. That is why the mind runs and the heart pants. But here a gentler cadence. Serene, I fold my hands and wait, not as resignation, but as recognition that life lives itself. Friends, it is not passivity, it is receptivity. In that interior softness, something not yourself yet, your very self, announces its government. Reframe the aim, then, not to fix symptoms, not to manage appearances, but to realize presence. Not to wrestle with fear, lack, or pain, but to behold God where those shadows boast, and let the light reveal them as shadows. Not to achieve a mood, but to receive a life. Be still and know that I am God. Know, not think. Know, not argue. In the stillness, the law changes from your management to divine order. It works silently, secretly, unseen, unheard, and when it works, efforts fall from your hands like old garments. Then you will say, without boasting, only with gratitude, I did not secure peace. Peace found me when I stopped securing. And that, beloved, is the end of striving and the beginning of knowing. Beloved, hear the law and do not let it slip from your inner ear. Out of the silence, the presence and the power of God comes. Not out of more words about God, not out of anxious thinking for God, but out of silence. Silence that is not a vacancy, but a vitality. Not a lack, but a living fullness. Be still and know that I am God. Not be clever and conclude. Be still and know. The stillness is not mere abstinence from noise. It is the consecrated clearing in which presence announces itself, the channel through which the infinite invisible becomes felt and begins to govern. So keep this ear open, not the outer ear alone, but the inner ear that hears the still small voice. Do not force sentences. Do not manufacture revelations. Do not hold your breath and wait for syllables as if God were a late train. Only readiness. Only a simple, wordless consent, as a servant saying within, Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. I have stood in corridors where machines hummed, in kitchens where kettles protested, in offices where telephones demanded attention, and I have known a minute's inward turning to be enough, not because the place grew quiet, but because the heart gave place to the quiet that is God. The deeper the silence, the more tangible the power. There is a warmth that gathers at the center of the chest. There is a clarity that dawns behind the brow. There is an ease that slips into the joints of living. And I tell you, these are not moods you manufacture by suggestion. This is the touch of reality. The difference is, as between reading of the sun and standing in its light, in silence, God is no longer inferred by reasoning. God is known by contact. Not an idea of God, but God. Not a conclusion, but a communion. Do not say, I tried to be quiet, nothing happened. The seed works in the dark. It works silently, secretly, unseen, unheard, and yet the earth brings forth of herself. A young seamstress, I will call her, Ruth, told me she would pause with the needle poised and, for 60 seconds, listen without asking. She did not beg for more orders or fewer bills. She merely yielded. More than once, she returned to her work with a new pattern in mind, with a customer's face remembered, with a sweetness in the room that was not there before. Did the fabric change? No. The government did. The Father within, he doeth the works, and in the hush the Father is given leave. Mark the distinction well. Not the absence of thought alone, but the presence known within thought's clearing, not spacing out, but entering in, not an empty room, but a holy of holies. When you sit or stand or walk and let a breath widen and inwardly whisper nothing but consent, here am I, then the invisible begins, its visible ordering, guidance without guessing, strength without bracing, peace without purchase. Keep this ear open as you wash a dish, cross a street, read a ledger. Out of the silence, the presence and the power of God comes, and in that sacred channel, the kingdom within ceases to be a theory and becomes your felt life. The kingdom of God is within you, not beyond the stars, not at the far edge of a pilgrimage, not to be carried into you by better sermons or holier moods, but within you, already present, already whole. We do not import God. We awaken to what is. We do not build a bridge to heaven. We open the inner shutter and find the light has been shining all along. In the hush we have entered, this is what discloses itself, not a God to be summoned, but a presence to be realized. Be still and know that I am God. No, not later, not elsewhere, but here. Now hear the identity turn that ends exile. God is the mind of you, the life of you, the soul of you, nearer than hands and feet, closer than breathing. I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me, is not a monk's embroidery. It is your own anatomy of spirit. Not two in a room, God and you negotiating, but one, I revealing itself as your very awareness, your seeing, your being. I and my Father are one, said the Master. And if the Master spoke truth, it is the truth of you. The Father within, he doeth the works, and the you that frets and strains is only a costume, the one eye wears until the costume is laid aside. In the one mind, we are not separate seekers crossing deserts to find an oasis. We are the oasis expressed, the infinite invisible, which religions have named and circled and sung to, does not stand apart like a sovereign behind gates. It breathes as your breath, thinks as your thought when thought is yielded, loves as your love when love is pure. You are not a private mind trying to reach a distant mind. You are an activity of the one mind, an individualized transparency for the self that has no second. Wave to ocean, ray to sun, branch to vine, choose your figure. The fact remains, the life of the whole is your life, and the strength of the root is your strength. Do not stumble at the names, Emmanuel, Christ, Tao, Buddha, different syllables, one presence realized within. Abraham called, Shankara pointed, Jesus unveiled, the sages of the East and the psalmists of Zion drank of the same well. In him we live and move and have our being. If the label comforts you, keep it. If it divides you, drop it. The reality behind the label must be felt. Make your contact with the infinite invisible, and the argument over vocabulary will end in a shared silence in which only God is. One with God is a majority. Take that as law when the sea of appearances rises, when a report shouts lack, when a body accuses, when headlines rehearse fear. One realized consciousness outweighs 100 clamors of suggestion. I have watched a single soul seated in a waiting room of bad news close the inner door and remember oneness, and without protest or performance, the atmosphere bent from panic to poise as wheat bows to wind, not because a personality took control, but because the one took form as peace. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. Let the Lord keep the city of your consciousness, and you will find the outer city kept. This, beloved, is where transformation begins, when oneness shifts from doctrine to a felt fact, not saying God is, but knowing God is here as the very isness of me. Not boasting, but bowing so deeply that only God is left to be seen, to be heard, to be. Then action flows from being, guidance from presence, and the works are His. Remain in that inner knowing, and grace will confirm it. But first, let the heart confess the truth it secretly already knows. The kingdom is within, and you are not outside your own life. Grace is the law of this inner kingdom, and grace is the way it acts. Live by grace without taking thought. Not by calculating tomorrow, not by rehearsing worst-case scenes and best-case plans, but by consenting here and now to the presence that is already within you as your life. Take no thought for your life was the counsel, and it is not irresponsibility. It is a new government. It is the end of managing outcomes and the beginning of beholding the one who has always managed being itself. When you cease reaching, peace arrives because you have stopped interrupting the worker within. Hear the Master's own procedure. I can of mine own self do nothing. That is not defeat. That is doorway. The Father that dwelleth in me, He doeth the works. Not the Father somewhere, the Father within. Therefore, our prayer is not a convincing of God, not a pressure of thought against the world, but a yielding an inward bow that says, Thy will be done, and then keeps the inner ear open long enough for the will to be known and to perform itself. Not by mental might, not by personal power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Grace is that Spirit's mode of action, effortless, exact, and sure. Mark how grace moves, without effort, without fixing, without forcing. The yoke is easy, the burden is light. I watched a shopkeeper, let us call him Daniel, whose accounts frightened him. He had sharpened pencils, sharpened worries, sharpened strategies, and the arithmetic refused to turn kind. One noon he closed the ledger, turned the chair from the desk, and sat for 1 minute in silence, not asking, not outlining, only consenting. Father, I can of mine own self do nothing. Do thou the works. He returned to the counter with no new idea in his head, only quiet in his chest. Before day's end, 2 orders long delayed, cleared. A supplier called to correct his own error, and what Daniel had tried to force arranged itself. Did silence send telegrams? No. It released grace to be grace. Prayer, then, is not an argument, it is an availability. Stop your self-treatment. Stop telling God the problem's measurements and the solution's blueprint. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Cast your burden upon the Lord and leave it cast. Behold God. Refuse the invitation to explain evil or to repair it. In that beholding, the Christ performs all things for us. If words are needed, let them be few and yielded. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. And then, hush, let the still small voice conduct what your shouting could never arrange. When the fear rises, withdraw inwardly a moment and lay the matter on the altar of silence, not to get God into the difficulty, but to recognize God as the life of all that appears as difficulty. Rest it there. Let the inner assurance announce itself. Let stillness finish what your planning began. You will find yourself moving, but moved, speaking, but spoken through acting, but as overflow, not as strain. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Added, not rested. Bestowed, not built by anxiety. This is grace over grind, the holy arithmetic of the kingdom within. What striving cannot do, grace accomplishes effortlessly when you yield your will to the inner worker. Beloved, if grace performs the works, then what is our posture when the world parades its wounds, when a report arrives, when a ledger scowls, when a body complains? Not battle, but beholding. Not to fight error, not to name it, weigh it, and then wrestle it in the dark, but to recognize it as appearance without law. without God, without substance. The one mind knows only itself. Therefore, whatever claims a second mind, a second power, a second law, call it disease, call it lack, call it conflict, has no ordinance of God to support it. Be still and know that I am God. In that knowing, appearances are unmasked as shadows upon the wall of sense. I watched a worker in the spirit, let us call her Anna, who kept a little basket on a side table. Names were written and laid in it by those who came in trouble. I asked her, on a morning heavy with requests, what she saw when she looked upon that pile. She smiled and answered, there isn't any such patient in the basket. I'll tell you what's in that basket, God. Do you see? Not a denial of persons, not indifference to pain, but a radical seeing. She refused to behold a chain of symptoms. She beheld the substance that alone is. In that beholding, the Christ performs all things for us, because we have stopped attributing power to what God never authored. I live, yet not I, Christ, liveth in me. As long as you stand apart as a fixer, a solver, a warrior against conditions, you maintain the illusion that there is both you and a problem, and you must marshal might to overcome it. Not so. The separate problem solver dissolves in that word. Only the Christ remains as your very awareness. And the Christ does not heal. The Christ reveals that God alone is where the world diagnoses, the practitioner beholds. Where the senses insist on lack or conflict, the beholder rests in the allness of God and lets the infinite invisible come through as peace, as order, as sufficiency. How then, in the moment of fear, do not rehearse the symptom, do not argue with it, turn it once, even if only for 60 seconds, into the hush and consent, Father within, thou art the life, the law, the substance here. Say nothing of the appearance. Say much of God silently. Keep the inner ear open. Listen without asking for outcomes. Let the one mind be the mind of you, and watch how the agitation loosens its claim. One with God is a majority. You are not imposing truth upon error. You are withdrawing belief from a picture and returning to reality. Beloved, we heal by refusing the reality of error and beholding only God as the substance of all that appears. And in that beholding, grace, quiet, exact, unhurried, does what effort never could. Now we come to the price, not a purchase, not a bribing of heaven, but the simple, steady willingness to keep your mind stayed on God until the hush is not an event but an atmosphere. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. How shall we stay the mind? Not by long vigils you cannot keep, not by heroic marathons that exhaust you, but by brief, holy appointments that you will honor. 3 or 4 periods every day, morning, noon, dinner, bedtime, 2 or 3 minutes each, no more at first, and do not miss them. Set them as you set meals. When you wake, when the sun rides the middle, when the house quiets for the evening meal, and before the final lamp is turned low, pause, turn within, and consent. Father, here am I. Speak, thy servant heareth. Not to think about God, to let God be known. Between these stated rests, touch him many times, 12 to 20 returns through the day, 60 seconds at a doorway, 30 seconds while the kettle begins to whisper, a breath at the sink, at the mailbox, at the red light. Let each threshold be a sanctuary. Make every bell a call to the secret place. An apt timer set to vibrate and not to sing will do as a silent deacon. When it nudges you, do not argue, do not postpone, turn and listen. It is not the length that builds the temple, it is the constancy. Like drops upon a stone, these touches hollow a chamber where the presence abides and speaks. You will pay another part of the price by subtraction. Cut the noise. Newspapers, radios, streams, socials, if you must, keep a corner, but cut out 90%. Not as a law from me, not as piety, but to make room for the still small voice. I made that discovery long ago. As the din decreases, the discernment increases. You cannot keep the inner ear open while a parade marches through the head. Reduce the inputs, you will not be poorer, you will be rich in a way that manages your going out and your coming in. Do not be satisfied with anything less than an actual realization of God. Do not be content with words about God, emotions about God, or clever thoughts about the mysteries. If in one of these brief appointments there is only quiet, keep it and be grateful. If there is warmth or weight or a soft inner announcement of peace, linger a breath and let it fix you. But do not rise on theory. Wait for the touch. Be still and know that I am God. No, do not suppose. And if it does not break through today, return tonight. If tonight, return in the morning. The seed works in the dark, and you are not the gardener, you are the soil consenting. Tie your practice to the life you are already living. Every doorway a bow, every kettle a bell, each calendar hour a minute, tied to the invisible. I have done it in trains, in waiting rooms, in kitchens hot with work. You can do it under all conditions. Brief, frequent, faithful. Pay the price, beloved. Keep your mind stayed on God in these short consecrated turns, and you will find the hush becomes habitation, and peace no longer visits, it abides. Sit quietly, beloved. Let the body come to rest as a servant laying down its bundle at the door. Soften the breath until it moves of itself. Let it be the tide, not the pump. Let the forehead smooth as a lake at dawn. Let the jaw unclasp. Let the tongue be at ease in its bed. Hands loose, not gripping. Feet grounded, not braced. We are not performing. We are consenting. How shall I stand before thee but in silence? I will keep silent before thee. Now, without effort or embroidery, offer the simplest address. Father, here I am silent. I can of mine own self do nothing. Do you hear the knot? But that opens the door. Not proposing, not persuading, but presenting yourself as availability. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Then stop speaking. Keep this ear open, not the outer ear only, but that inner listening just beyond the drum, just inside the soul's threshold, where the still small voice is heard. Let one line of Scripture be the doorway, not to think upon, but to enter by. Be still and know that I am God. Rest in that word know. Not think that I am, not imagine, not deduce, no. Say it once within and cease. Let the syllables fade like ripples. Remain for 30 seconds, for 60 seconds. Bare, unoccupied, consenting. If a thought comes, it comes. Let it pass as a cloud. If a feeling arrives, it arrives. Let it soften and move through. Do not chase. Do not resist. Return without strain, without scolding to know. Keep the inner ear turned to that quiet which is self-announcing. It is just outside of your usual hearing and yet nearer than hands and feet. You are not reaching up, you are allowing in. You are not making contact by mental fingers. You are letting contact be made. Make your contact with the infinite invisible by refusing to make it, by letting it happen of itself in the unguarded moment when you do nothing and God is all. The Father within, He doeth the works. Let Him. If there is warmth at the heart, note it and do nothing. If there is only ordinary air, be content. The seed works in the dark, secretly, unseen, unheard. Your part is not achievement, your part is agreement. Hold to stillness the length of a slow minute. Be still and know that I am God. When the minute ends, do not clutch at it, do not appraise it. Simply let a breath go out as an amen without words, and rise without hurry. You have entered the secret place when thinking about God has been set aside and God is allowed to be known. Not a picture, not a phrase, but a presence felt or quietly trusted. Take this pattern with you as you move. It will be enough. Brief, faithful, yielded. One with God is a majority, and in this consenting hush, the majority announces its government. Now we take the same hush and let it touch the places where the world clamors for supply, for help, for answers. Come without a shopping list. Come without problems under your arm. Come only with a desire to touch the Christ. Your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before ye ask him. If a list rises of itself, this bill, that symptom, that decision, lay it silently upon the altar within and step back. Do not read it to God. Do not suggest timing. Do not outline forms. Only this: Father, I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within, he doeth the works. Then be still. Beholding is the prayer. Not watching the problem, not measuring its shadows, but beholding God where the shadow boasts, wherever lack seems to appear. Behold fullness, God as substance, as the very isness of all that is. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Not as a verse to convince, but as a seeing to which you yield. Wherever illness appears, behold wholeness, God as life, unfragmented, indivisible, present as the life of that very place. I am the Lord that healeth thee. Wherever a question tightens the brow, behold wisdom, God as knowing, God as order, God as the mind of you. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, and it shall be given him. Yet even here, ask and then cease asking, sink beneath words until asking is outgrown by knowing. Let a soft thank you rise and fall, not as a demand disguised, but as recognition. Thank you, period. Not thank you for dollars, for diagnoses changed, for plans approved, but thank you for God. Then let even gratitude become quiet and return to the wordless floor on which God is all. The Christ performs all things for us, not because we have argued well, but because we have made room, not by might, not by mental power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. If an image intrudes an unpaid note, an aching joint, a tangled choice, do not push it away, do not clasp it. Place it again upon the inner altar with that same surrender. Father, thou art the life here, the law here, the substance here. Then turn your face from the appearance to the presence. Keep the inner ear open. Listen, not for sentences merely, but for that quiet which is self-announcing. The deeper the silence, the more surely the government shifts from your hands to his. Seal the period gently. Do not spring from the chair. Do not break the surface with chatter. Rise as you would from deep water slowly, with a quiet, still clinging. Let your first movements be few and unhurried. Carry the felt hush into the next action, to the phone, to the stove, to the street. Let your words be fewer than usual. Let them be kind. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Do not speak of what you did. Do not compare today with yesterday. Do not check the altar for results. Walk on, inwardly bowed, outwardly simple. Peace becomes practical exactly here. When you stop asking and start beholding. When you stop managing and start yielding. Grace performs what you could not. One with God is a majority. Keep to this applied stillness, brief, faithful, surrendered, and watch how supply comes as sufficiency, health as ease, answers as an unforced knowing, because the Father within is left free to do the works. Beloved, How shall you know that the Christ has taken the government upon his shoulder and that you have received rather than achieved? You will not find yourself straining to prove it. You will find yourself forgetting to strain. The breath lets go of its leash and moves on its own, unpushed. Space widens in the very room you are in, not because the furniture has moved, but because compulsion has. The need to fix, to explain, to hurry quiets, the yoke eases of itself. My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, not pressure passing for peace, but a presence announcing itself as rest. Guidance changes form. It ceases to shout options and begins to unveil one next step with the authority of a soft certainty. The inner debate thins, the path simplifies. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Not you building ladders of logic, him laying a roadway beneath your feet. A phone number rises without rummaging. A phrase to be spoken arrives complete, and when you speak it, there is no heat in it, only rightness. The left and the right cease their tug of war. There is just the obvious obedience that needs no argument. Outside, life begins to arrange itself without your managing. Supply does not march in on command. It comes as sufficiency, on time, without fanfare. A relationship that seemed knotted releases by a simple word or by none. An appointment you could not secure is offered unasked. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Not you pushing the river bearing you. You will notice that people relax in your presence without knowing why, that conversations land without effort, that timing becomes kind. One with God is a majority. Realized, it bends circumstances to peace as naturally as light rearranges a room. In this new climate, the soul is willing to wait, not with a clenched watch, but with a poised heart. Hear the poet witness to the law of trust. Serene, I fold my hands and wait. Not indolence, but confidence in the invisible that moves when you stop interfering. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. Waiting ceases to be delay. It becomes altitude. You find that you can do less and see more done, that you can speak less and communicate more, that you can plan less and arrive rightly. Now take this warning in love. Do not credit the technique. Do not say it was my posture, or it was that minute timer, or it was the sentence I used. It was not the chair, nor the clock, nor the syllable. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Give the glory where it belongs, to the Father within, to grace that performs all things for us. Let the mind bow again and again to the source, for attribution to method will turn sacrament into superstition, and what came as gift cannot be managed as gadget. You will know grace has acted when ease stands where effort stood, when breath is unforced, when words are fewer, when guidance comes as gentle certainty, when supply, relations, and timing harmonize without push. That is the aftershift. Do not clutch it, do not advertise it, do not measure it. Acknowledge the invisible and return to your brief, frequent turns to silence. Abide there, and the ordering will continue quietly, faithfully, without your managing, for the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Beloved, what has been given you is not a trinket for display. It is a pearl of great price. The kingdom touches you not to make you interesting, but to make you inwardly rich. Therefore guard it. Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. Do likewise. Speak little of your holy hours. Let the fruit testify. When the quiet has ripened something sweet, you need not advertise the tree. Pass the fruit in silence. Cast not your pearls before swine, not as an insult to any, but as a law of stewardship. Do not expose what is tender to the winds of curiosity or the teeth of argument. Keep it warm, hidden in the bosom of simplicity, and it multiplies of itself. Simplicity is the fence around the garden. Trim your inputs, trim your opinions, trim your hurry. Let your words be few. Be not rash with thy mouth, for God is in heaven, and thou upon earth. I urge you again, not as piety, but as practice, reduce the noise. You will discover that as the world's volume lowers, the still small voice is not small at all. It was only drowned. Cease explaining your realizations. Explanations turn wine back to water. Cease judging your periods. Judgment bruises the blossom. Cease hurrying. Haste is a thief at the gate of the secret place. Study to be quiet, not as withdrawal from duty, but as devotion to the presence that performs duty as overflow. Simplicity keeps the inner ear clean. It makes of the mind an uncluttered room where the Christ may sit and be known. And when we assemble, let us assemble in the same chastity of soul, not to compare notes, not to pile requests, not to thrust our problems upon the circle, but to come of one accord in one place, seeking only a touch of the Christ. Where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. In his name, meaning in his nature, in his character of quiet reliance. One with God is a majority. How much more when the room forgets itself and remembers only God? Bring no shopping lists. Bring availability. Hang your troubles at the door as coats. They will be warmed enough by the presence to fit differently when you depart. Keep the hour in silence or with few yielded words, a hymn of the heart rather than a parade of sentences. It works silently, secretly, unseen, unheard, and what is done in secret is shouted by life itself in the marketplace without our arranging. Do not stumble at names in this assembly. The same spirit that we know as Christ is the Tao in another tongue, Buddha nature to another ear, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to another heart, one mind, many tongues, one presence, many garments. We are not meeting to blend creeds, but to be still until creed dissolves in realized oneness. Then, when the hush has done its holy work, leave as you came quietly, without postscript, without analyzing what happened or did not happen, not to gossip about God, but to let God go before you. Guard the pearl by secrecy, keep it gleaming by simplicity, and when we are together, amplify it by a united hush that radiates farther than many words. Now take the pearl and walk with it. Do not leave the hush in the chair while you carry anxiety into the street. Let the hush become your atmosphere while your feet are in motion. Pray without ceasing is not a torrent of words. It is a continuity of listening. An inner ear kept slightly turned toward the invisible, while hands wash dishes, while eyes meet eyes in a meeting, while the cursor blinks in an email, not to withdraw from the world, but to carry the world into the sanctuary that is already within you. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Let action proceed from quiet. Let confidence be the robe that the inner silence places upon your shoulders before you step out. Make it practical. The phone rings. Before you answer, one breath within, Father, you first. The email stings. Before you reply, a pause no one sees. Father, you first. The child calls. The client knocks. The bus door opens under neon at 10 p.m. Father, you first. This is worship in spirit and in truth, not in temples only, but on buses, in kitchens, under neon, at the crosswalk, in the corridor between appointments. Not a show, not a performance, not a piety to be noticed, just the steady yielding of a will to the inner worker who never ceases. The Father within, he doeth the works. Consent to that government in micro-pauses all day long, and the macro pattern of life will show the order of heaven. Keep your identity steady as you move. Let labels fall off like old tags on a suitcase. Not anxious one, not achiever, not fixer, not the biography others have memorized. I live, yet not I, Christ liveth in me. Carry that as a quiet name in the heart. When ambition presses, answer inwardly, not by might, not by mental power, but by thy spirit. When worry clamors, let the refrain return, Father, you first. You do not add God to action. You let action be the overflow of God realized. Then the sentence you speak lands without heat. The silence you keep has its own eloquence. You move, but moved. You choose, but chosen through. Watch the ordering. In this way of walking, conversations soften of themselves. The edge comes off the hour. Timing aligns. Doors that your pushing could not open slide back on their own tracks. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Not you charting, him directing. You will find the right word waiting on your tongue, the right number rising to your mind, the right turn taken without debate. My peace I give unto you, and that peace is the tone in which your errands are done. This is embodiment. Life proceeding from inner silence, action as overflow of presence, not compensation for fear. Keep the inner ear open. Keep the brief continual yields. Let the day be punctuated by consent. Let every threshold be an altar and every task a hymn sung softly to the one who lives as you. One with God is a majority. Walk the street in that majority, worshiping in spirit and in truth, and you will discover that the world itself becomes a sanctuary through which the Father within quietly, faithfully does the work. Beloved, hear the golden thread that has run quietly through every word. The peace you want cannot be earned, only received, not as a prize for effort, but as presence realized when you consent to the hush. Be still and know that I am God. Out of the silence, not out of argument, the presence and the power come. How shall I stand before thee but in silence? I will keep silent before thee. The kingdom does not arrive by your pushing. It arrives as you yield. And in that yielding, the Christ becomes experience instead of vocabulary. Therefore, go in a simple, steady obedience. 3 or 4 set appointments every day, morning, noon, the evening meal, and before sleep 2 or 3 minutes each, to lay down self and let God be all. Between them, touch in 12, 15, 20 times, half a minute at a threshold, a breath at the sink, one quiet Father, you first, before the phone lifts. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Keep the mind stayed. Keep the inner ear turned. Keep the brief, faithful returns until the hush ceases to be a visit and becomes a dwelling. Remember the final knot. But that guards the gate, not by might, not by mental power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. Not by personal genius, not by carefully stacked logic, not by spiritual theatrics, but by the Father within who doeth the works. The Christ performs all things for us when we cease performing for God. Make your contact with the infinite invisible, and then stand aside inwardly while grace orders supply as sufficiency, help as ease, guidance as quiet certainty. Do less and see more done. Speak less and communicate more. Plan less and arrive rightly. I bless you now not with promises of spectacle, but with assurance of presence. May the presence go before you. May the rearward be guarded. May the path be made plain under your feet. May the room you enter find itself stilled without your explaining why. May courage come as confidence, and confidence as quietness. May your house be kept by the one who neither slumbers nor sleeps. One with God as a majority. Walk in that majority. May the Christ perform all things for you. Bless you. And now we seal this word, not with another word, but with what has carried us from the first line. Silence. No music, no petition, no proof, only consent. Let us keep 30 seconds of shared hush and let the amen be felt rather than said.